At Christmas dinner, my mom looked straight at me and said, "You're the most useless child we have." Everyone laughed like it was funny, everyone except me. That was the moment something inside me snapped. If they thought I was useless, they were about to learn the truth the hard way. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emery Sophia Carter. I'm 28 years old, living in Ohio. I don't have a glamorous career or a picture-perfect family of my own. I've worked steady, modest jobs ever since I left school, never really chasing big dreams, because for years my life wasn't mine to live. It belonged to my family, to the people who claimed I was a disappointment even as I quietly held everything together. Christmas dinner was supposed to feel warm, but it always carried tension for me. The big table was set with shining silverware, candles flickering against the windows. Mom, Linda Carter, sat at the head like a queen. She loved moments like these, when she could show off her children. Riley, the oldest, a 32-year-old lawyer, sat proudly beside her, talking about court cases and clients like she was untouchable. Adam, at 30, played the role of the golden boy, talking about the new house he'd bought and how successful his engineering firm. And Hadley, 26, smiled softly as everyone praised her for working long shifts as a nurse, the caring one in the family. I sat there listening, forcing myself to smile, trying to keep my shoulders straight even as every word made me feel smaller. The truth was, Mom adored each of them in ways she never adored me. She beamed when Riley spoke, nodded approvingly at Adam's stories, and even patted Hadley's hand like she was an angel. Then her eyes landed on me, and instead of kindness, she chose cruelty. "You're the most useless child we have." She said it like it was an afterthought, like announcing the weather. The room burst into laughter. Riley smirked, Adam chuckled. Hadley covered her mouth in a fake gasp, but no one defended me. I stared at the tablecloth, my chest tight, every muscle in my body screaming to get up and walk away. I thought of the years I spent in that same house, giving up everything to care for my father when he was sick. Nights without sleep, days filled with worry, time I could never get back. None of them had been there the way I was, and still, I was the one labeled useless. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just sat in silence, memorizing the sound of their laughter, letting the sting sink into my bone. Deep down, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. They wanted to call me useless? They had no idea who I really was, and soon they were going to find out. When I think back to my childhood, I remember how different I always felt from the rest of them. I loved painting, sketching, and making little crafts out of scraps I found around the house. While Riley buried her head in books and prepared for law school, Adam tinkered with machines and built things in the garage, and Hadley spent her time volunteering or being praised for how sweet she was. I was the one who dreamed with colors and ideas. To me, the world looked like a canvas. To my mom, it looked like laziness. She never missed a chance to compare me. Riley was the achiever. Her name was always spoken with pride. "Why can't you be more like Riley?" was something I heard so often it echoed in my head at night. Adam was the provider, the one who would grow into a man with a good job, stability, and respect. Mom said he would take care of everyone someday, though he never lifted a finger for anyone but himself. And then there was Hadley, the youngest, the one with a soft smile who could do no wrong. "She's so caring," Mom would say, holding her close like she was some kind of angel. And then there was me. I was Emery, the free spirit, which in my mom's language really meant the useless one. I had a chance to prove her wrong once. I'd been accepted to art school. I remember the letter in my hands, how my heart raced with excitement at the thought of finally doing something for myself. But then my dad got sick. Cancer doesn't care about your dreams, and when it hit our family, everyone scattered. Riley stayed busy with her career. Adam focused on building his future. Hadley dropped by only when it was convenient. I was the only one who stayed. I put away the art school letter and never spoke of it again. I took care of him, day and night, through treatments, through pain, through those awful quiet hours when I was the only one by his side. I cooked, cleaned, managed his medications, and watched the man who loved me more than anyone slowly fade away. When he finally passed, I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would see me different, that they'd recognize what I gave up for him. But they didn't. Riley went back to bragging. Adam went back to building. Hadley went back to being praised. And me? I went back to being the target, the one they could call useless without guilt, the one who sacrificed everything and got nothing in return. That betrayal never left me. It burned in me, deeper than anything else. The room was warm, but I felt cold inside. After my mom's words at the table, I tried to keep my face blank, even though my chest ached. Riley leaned back in her chair, swirling wine in her glass like she was the star of the show. She talked about a case she had just won, her voice rising with every detail. waiting for everyone to clap for her brilliance. Adam joined in next, speaking proudly about the house he had just bought. He described the granite countertops and the size of the backyard like he had built it with his own hand. Hadley wasn't far behind, telling everyone about her new promotion at the hospital and how her co-workers respected her. I sat there, listening to their voices overlap. Every story meant to remind me how much higher they stood in the family. Mom's eyes glowed with pride as she looked at them. She nodded, smiled, even placed her hand on Riley's arm like she was the crown jewel of the family. Then her gaze slid to me, and the warmth vanished. "At least Riley and Adam know how to make us proud," she said. Her words were smooth, but the edge cut deep. Hadley gave me a quick look, almost like she pitied me, then went back to talking about her job. I clenched my hands under the table, my nails pressing into my palm. I wanted to say something, anything, but I knew if I opened my mouth, my voice would crack. They would see tears, weakness, and that would give them exactly what they wanted. So I stayed quiet. I kept chewing my food slowly, pretending I didn't hear the dig, pretending I was unaffected. But inside, something shifted. Their laughter, their smugness, my mother's cruel little smirk. It all piled on top of years of being overlooked and mocked. I realized, sitting there in that dining room, that this would be the last time I let them do this to me. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I wasn't going to scream or storm out. That would only give them another story to laugh about later. No, I would wait. I would watch. I would plan. They thought they knew me, thought I would always sit quietly and take the punches. They didn't see what was building inside me, but they would. This wasn't the end of their jokes. It was the beginning of my answer. When I think back to the long months of caring for my dad, I remember the quiet talks we had late at night when the pain kept him awake. Those moments were heavy, but they were also honest in a way I never had with anyone else. He trusted me, not just with his care, but with pieces of truth he never shared with the rest of the family. One evening, when the house was dark and the only sound was the ticking clock in the kitchen, he called me over. His voice was weak, but his eyes were steady. He handed me an envelope, sealed and marked with my name. "This is for you when the time comes," he whispered. I didn't ask questions then, but later I found out it was his will, leaving the family home entirely to me. It wasn't the only thing he gave me. He showed me papers that revealed how Mom had moved money out of his savings without telling him. He told me he didn't want Riley, Adam, or Hadley involved because he knew they would side with her. And then there were the letters, his handwriting uneven but clear, explaining that Linda never truly hated me for being lazy. She hated me because I reminded her of him. Independent, stubborn, the one person in the family she couldn't control. For years, I carried that knowledge quietly, but it wasn't just my father's secrets I held. Watching my siblings so closely all my life had shown me cracks in their perfect images. Riley, the lawyer everyone admired, wasn't as put together as she seemed. She was drowning in debt, hiding overdue bills and loan statements behind her expensive clothes and fancy work. Adam, the golden boy, had a marriage that looked picture-perfect on the outside, but was rotting on the inside. I knew about the nights away on business trips that weren't business at all. And Hadley, the so-called angel of the family, wasn't spotless either. She once made a mistake at the hospital, a serious one, and instead of owning up, she quietly covered it up to save her reputation. Piece by piece, I saw them for who they really were. My father's trust, my mother's lies, my siblings' hidden flaws. They all became threads in my hand. I realized I wasn't powerless at all. I had the kind of leverage that could shatter every illusion they built. And for the first time, I felt the weight shift in my favor. I decided to start small. Not with a fight, not with yelling, but with quiet reminders that I wasn't blind. My first stop was Riley. She suggested we grab coffee one afternoon, probably thinking she could brag some more about her latest win in court. I listened to her talk, nodding here and there, and then, as I stirred my drink, I asked, "Do you ever feel like all those student loans and credit cards just keep piling up, no matter how much you make?" Her smile faltered. For a second, her confident face cracked, and I caught it. She forced a laugh, brushing her hair back, saying something about how everyone has debt. But her eyes betrayed her. She knew I knew, and I didn't need to say another word. A few days later, I dropped by to see Adam. He liked to show off his new place, the big house he wouldn't stop talking about. As he walked me through the kitchen, I asked casually, "Does your wife ever get tired of all the business trips?" I kept my tone light, as if I was making small talk. He stammered, almost dropped the glass he was holding. "Work's demanding," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I smiled politely and let the silence hang, watching him squirm in his own kitchen. He changed the subject quickly, but his hands kept fidgeting. Finally, there was Hadley. She invited me over for lunch after one of her shifts. She always tried to play the sweet sister, the one with the gentle heart. While she fussed over making sandwiches, I asked softly, "Do you ever think about that time something almost went wrong at the hospital, when a patient didn't get the right dose?" Her face went pale instantly. She set the knife down slowly, her lips pressed tight together. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered, but her hands trembled. I didn't push. I just smiled and took a bite of my sandwich, acting like nothing had happened. I never raised my voice. I never threatened any of them. I didn't need to. Each of them knew, in their own way, that I saw through the image they worked so hard to keep polished. Walking away from each meeting, I felt something I had never felt before: control. For the first time, the balance shifted. It wasn't me under their spotlight anymore. It was them squirming under mine. After dealing with my siblings, I turned my attention to the person who sat at the center of it all: my mother. Linda wasn't just sharp-tongued. She was the kind of woman who lived off control. Every move she made was about holding power over the rest of us. And for as long as I could remember, she had shaped the family into her image. Riley, Adam, and Hadley all bent to her without question. I was the only one who didn't, and that was why she hated me most. One night, I sat on my bed with the old letters my father had left me. His handwriting wavered on the page, but his words were clear. He admitted what I had always felt but never fully believed. Linda had never truly loved him. She loved what he gave her: security, a house, a stable life, and a family she could parade around like trophies. He wrote that he knew she favored the others because they were easy to shape. Riley, hungry for praise. Adam, proud but eager to be approved of. Hadley, desperate to be seen as gentle and good. They fit neatly into her mold. I, on the other hand, never did. My father wrote that I reminded her of strong-willed, stubborn, someone who wanted to live life their own way instead of bowing down to her. He believed that was the real reason she singled me out, the real reason she called me names. It was never about being useless. It was about being uncontrollable. Reading those words, something inside me settled. For years I had carried her insults like a weight, believing them, letting them sink into my bone. But now I saw them for what they really were. They weren't truths about me, they were fears about her. She despised me because she couldn't shape me like she did the others. I decided then that my plan couldn't stop at exposing my sibling. Making Riley nervous, watching Adam stumble, and seeing Hadley pale. It was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. The heart of the poison in our family was Linda. She was the one who built the game, who divided us, who used us against one another. If I was going to take back what was stolen from me, I had to go further. My revenge had to break her grip completely. It wasn't just about proving myself. It was about shattering the crown she wore over all of us. I set the table carefully, making sure everything looked perfect. Candles flickered against the walls, soft music played in the background, and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. I had spent the whole day cooking, making every detail flawless. For years, my mother had said I couldn't cook, that I couldn't manage anything properly. Tonight, I wanted her to walk into my home and see nothing to criticize. When the doorbell rang, I greeted them with a calm smile. Riley walked in first, her heels clicking against the floor. Adam followed, carrying a bottle of wine like he was doing me a favor. Hadley came last, her voice cheerful as she complimented the apartment. And then Mom appeared, her sharp eyes scanning everything, clearly ready to find fault. The meal went smoothly at first. They ate, complimented the food, and even Mom had to admit the chicken was cooked perfectly. "Not bad," she said, but I caught the way her lips tightened, like she didn't want to give me the satisfaction. I kept my smile small. This was only the beginning. After dessert, I folded my napkin and placed it neatly on the table. My heart beat fast, but my voice was steady. I started with Riley. I heard debt can be tough, especially when it piles up faster than you can pay it down. I slid a folder across the table. Riley's face went pale when she saw the overdue notices and loan statements I had collected. Before she could speak, I turned to Adam. And business trips must be exhausting, especially when they come with hotel receipts that don't match the story. Another folder. Photos and records sat inside. Adam's jaw tightened, his cheeks flushed red. Then I looked at Hadley. Hospitals are busy places. Mistakes happen. But covering them up? That can ruin a life. I placed the last set of papers in front of her, showing a copied report she thought no one had ever seen. Hadley's hand shook as she pushed it away. The room exploded. Riley snapped at Adam, accusing him of being reckless. Adam barked back, calling her a hypocrite. Hadley burst into tears, saying none of it was fair. Voices overlapped, anger spilled across the table, and for once, I didn't say a word. I sat back, calm and silent, while the chaos spread around me. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at each other, exposed and furious, their perfect image crumbling right there in my apartment. I saved my mother for last. My siblings were already sunk in their own shame after what I had revealed about them. Riley wouldn't look at me. Adam stared at the table, and Hadley kept twisting her napkin like it might tear in half. None of them spoke. They were waiting, the same way I had waited for years while they laughed at me. This time, I held the floor. I reached into my folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. My mother's eyes followed my hand, sharp and suspicious. I laid the document on the table and unfolded it. My voice was steady as I said, "This is Dad's will." I paused long enough to watch the confusion flicker across their faces before I read aloud. The house, the very place where my mother had built her control, didn't belong to all of us. It belonged to me and only me. I watched her face lose color. For as long as I could remember, that house had been her throne, her proof of power. Now, with a few words on paper, that throne was gone. She pressed her lips together so tightly they looked bloodless. For once, she had no quick remark, no sharp insult. Just silence. I wasn't done. I pulled out another folded page, this one in my father's shaky handwriting. My chest tightened, but I read it aloud so every one of them could hear. To my Emery, my strongest child. You stood by me when no one else did. I want you to know I saw your sacrifices, and I am grateful. My voice didn't waver. I wanted every word to sink in. The air turned heavier. My mother slammed her hand against the table, accusing me of twisting things, of manipulation, of lies. But her voice cracked as she said it, and I could see the panic behind her eyes. For years she had painted me as weak, useless, a burden. Now the truth was written in my father's own words. And then, something I never expected happened. Riley finally spoke, her tone sharp, not at me, but at Mom. Adam muttered about how things had always been this way. Hadley, pale and shaken, whispered that maybe Dad had been right all along. One by one, they turned on her, not me. I sat quietly, watching the power that had ruled my life crumble right in front of me. The family storms out in pieces, each of them carrying their own shame. Riley's steps were quick and sharp, but she never once looked back at me. Adam moved slower, his head down, his shoulders heavy as if the truth I had spoken pressed on him with every step. Hadley didn't say a word. She slipped away quietly, her face pale, her hands clenched at her sides. None of them could meet my eyes. My mother stood last. She lingered near the door, her hand resting on the knob. For a second, she looked like she wanted to say something, an insult, a threat, anything to regain control. But the words never came. She only tightened her jaw, lifted her chin, and left without a sound. That silence said more than any speech ever could. She walked out without her crown, stripped of the image she had built for herself all these years. When the door closed, I was the only one left in the room. I didn't move right away. I sat there, breathing slowly, letting the stillness sink in. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable like it used to be when they ignored me or dismissed me. This quiet belonged to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking under their voices. I wasn't the one bending to their rules. I was steady, and they were the ones who had broken apart. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I didn't need to beg them to see my worth. The truth had spoken for itself, and it was enough. I hadn't lost control for even a moment. I felt calm, steady, and sure of who I was. The table was still messy from dinner, plates stacked unevenly, crumbs scattered across the cloth, glasses half full. But none of that mattered. I wasn't thinking about cleaning up or putting things back in order. I was thinking about how, for once, I didn't feel small in my own family. I didn't feel like the one left out or the one to laugh at. I felt strong sitting there in the silence. No shouting, no tears, no chaos. Just me, breathing in the calm and knowing that the balance had finally shifted. What they tried to take from me, I had reclaimed. Quiet strength was all I needed, and it was finally mine. I moved into the family home with the keys still feeling strange in my hand. The rooms were quiet, but the walls carried years of voices and argument. For the first time, though, it didn't feel like their place anymore. It was mine. Every step I took echoed differently, as if the house itself knew it had a new keeper. The first thing I did was open the windows. Fresh air poured in, washing away the heavy feeling that had lived there for so long. I carried in boxes filled with things that belonged only to me. Paints, brushes, canvases, and small pieces of art I had tucked away for years. I placed them carefully, filling corners that had always felt bare. I hung my own paintings on the walls where family portraits once sat. Bright colors replaced stiff smiles. A canvas of a rising sun filled the hallway. A soft landscape rested above the fireplace. Every piece I put up made the house feel warmer, freer, alive. It was no longer a stage for my mother's control. It was my sanctuary. I worked slowly, one room at a time, not rushing the process. In the kitchen, I placed plants on the windowsill. In the living room, I set a soft rug under the coffee table. Upstairs, I turned the quietest bedroom into a studio where I could paint for hours without anyone telling me it was a waste of time. Bit by bit, the house transformed into the home I had dreamed about but never thought I would have. At night, I would sit by the window with a cup of tea, looking at the space around me. I thought about all the years I had been told I was nothing, that I had no value, that I was useless compared to my sibling. Yet here I was not because of their approval, but because I had been strong enough to stand my ground. The revenge wasn't in their shame or their silence. It was in my peace. I didn't need to shout at them or prove anything. Living here, building this home with my own hands, was proof enough. I touched the frame of one of my father's letters, now resting on a shelf in the living room. His words stayed with me as I whispered into the quiet, steady air. They'll never call me useless again. Not after this. What do you think? Was Emery right to finally stand her ground and take back her life, or should she have tried to forgive her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.